Is the recently signed Paris COP21 climate change deal legally binding? Are the world's biggest polluters fully committed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions? Is it possible to keep the global average temperatures below 2 degrees Celsius? And how best can a global tax on carbon pollution be imposed on non-compliant countries? What time is it? It is question time. Welcome to Question Time. My name is Mpho Tsedu. The 21st Conference of Parties, otherwise known as COP21, under the auspices of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, has been hailed as the world's first universal climate deal. The agreement adopted in Paris, France, recently signals international commitment to keep the global average temperatures well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. The long-term aim is a further 1.5 degrees Celsius reduction. Multinationals have called for a price on carbon dioxide emissions, a gas widely blamed for global warming. This to create an incentive for power plants and factories to shift to cleaner forms of energy. A reminder that this is a live program and therefore you can call us and air your views. What do you think about this COP17? 18, 19, we are at 21 now. The number to dial 089-110-4210. Our Twitter handle at QuestionTime24. My guest today, Professor Godwell Hamo, Exaro Chair in Business and Climate Change at the University of South Africa, and Nokuthula Mene, who is Economic Justice Campaigns Advisor at Oxfam. Let me welcome you both to Question Time. I would say another talk shop came to an end at a high price. Am I wrong?
No, you wouldn't be wrong in saying that. So we've had a number of conference of parties, and we are now at the 21st conference of parties. And this has been hailed as a global agreement, but unfortunately there are winners and losers, and we feel that the vulnerable populations, especially of the South, have been given a frayed lifeline, and they're still vulnerable to droughts, floods, and etc., especially considering that we're still heading towards a 3 degrees Celsius rise instead of the wanted 1.5 degrees Celsius.
So, waste of money?
Not a waste of money, but a stepping board. A step in the right direction, but we're not there yet.
Okay. Is this agreement legally binding?
Thank you for good evening to the listeners. I want to start maybe by giving a bit of history to these negotiations. The first things like we start, the first stop will be Rio de Janeiro. Some of us who know that is the 8th summit. I want to emphasize that there were fundamental principles that were raised there in Rio. That is 1992. One of them was the polluter pays principle, which have been battling with for a long time. The second fundamental was the precautionary principle, which also has been battling with for a long time. And the third fundamental for today is the issue of equity. Now from at the 8th summit came the UNFCCC, which actually was the legally binding United Nations agreement that governs climate change negotiations.
Yes.
So in the UNFCCC is embedded the principle of equity, and also common but differentiated responsibilities and capabilities of nations. So the major point of contention from the historical perspective was that developed nations, you've got the capability and should do more. And developing nations don't have the capability and should do less in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Now, when you fast forward, you come to Copenhagen in 2009. We're supposed to be having a successor to the Kyoto Protocol, which was basically coming to an end, or the commitment period expiring in 2012. But then that deal did not come through. Hence, we moved forward to Durban in 2011, where we came up with the Durban platform. So what the Durban platform did was technically to come up with a stopgap measure from 2013 to 2015, whereby we extended the life of the Kyoto Protocol. And by 2015, we were supposed to be having a one-stop or global agreement, possibly why it is being held as the treaty of all times, because all 194 countries at least agreed to this one-stop shop or one-stop agreement.
But is the agreement legally binding?
The agreement is quasi-legally binding. So by quasi-legally binding, I mean it's half binding and half not binding.
Okay, hold it there. Jack, you're calling us from around Houghton.
Yes, Paul, good evening.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for your call.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show, on your brilliant show.
Thank you.
Moving to 2016, just a brief comment, if I may.
Okay.
Okay. This show has huge relevance and magnitude in nature, involving all South Africans, I would assume, in current affairs and etc. For instance, the topic of today,
yes.
It also, anyway, I'm not sure if majorities of your viewers understanding this academic or Shakespearean language arising often in your show like today, obviously conditioned to topics and guests like today.
Yes.
Perhaps producers and yourself
yes.
consider seriously to give some interpretation predominantly in terms of language
Okay.
to enable and to mobilize more participants to express themselves.
On the show, that is.
Of course, of course.
Okay. Jack, thank you very much. I'm sure they are listening and will definitely take into consideration what you've just said. But what Jack is saying is that normally there's conferences, speak very good English, come up with all these protocols and agreements and all that, and then it does not translate to the ordinary person who is somewhere around here in South Africa.
Yeah, so that has been our criticism as well. The negotiations, for example, this year were held in Paris.
Yes.
Away from the grassroots population, the smallholder farmer in Limpopo who is failing to produce because of climate change. And the question is government who is the negotiating party, are they taking the voices of the poor woman from Limpopo up to COP21, or are they taking voices purely from a policy perspective without actually consulting the grassroots, which is what we have gone and done as Oxfam. We've gone into the field together with other organizations and actually consulted people, and the call is that people are facing climate change. Climate change is a reality on the ground, but unfortunately COP21 has failed to deliver with regards to the issue of finance. People need finance in order to be able to adapt to the effects of climate change.
What would you have preferred?
Well, we've called for separate goal on adaptation finance. That has not been seen in the final agreement. Also, there has been a vague reference to climate finance being scaled up, but no figure has been set up as to what that figure would be and how we would get to that. Already we are struggling to get to the 100 billion that was committed earlier. We're struggling to get to that. So if we're going to scale it up, how are we going to get to that point? So it leaves the question, is it only a vague promise that is being promised that might never be realized whilst the people continue to suffer on the ground?
Normally these conferences do not involve the polluters, which is, the people who are supposed to be there to answer. I mean, if BP can be fined billions in the US, if Shell can still account to, the damage of the environment in Nigeria as a result of the pipes that they have laid down there, but still nothing happens. All they are prepared to do is just to pay that fine, which I mean, obviously they're multinationals, they've got the money, they'll pay that. Is it all really about money?
Thank you. I just want to say we have seen a remarkable shift in terms of how business is being involved in the climate change negotiations. For interest sake, this year at COP21, we had the Women Business Initiative. That is about 500 representation of corporates that were in Paris. So really, by the end of the day, we are saying we have seen more and more of business involvement in these climate negotiations. Okay. And they are also committing to reducing their emissions. I know from South Africa, we've got the Carbon Disclosure Project now being just referred to as CDP, where our industry here, they have committed to disclose their carbon emissions and also to put motion into what they are saying. Now, what is interesting also from the COP21 is this notion of how business can manipulate outcomes. Okay. So this is why I was saying the agreement is quasi-legally binding, because you know where businesses are involved, they prefer self-regulation or voluntary commitments.
Okay, we'll talk about that. Devin, you are calling us from Limpopo? Yeah, hello?
Hello, good evening. How are you doing?
We are well. Thanks for the call.
Yes, I was wondering if the United Nations, especially the Security Council, could try to come up with laws and regulations on how maybe we could try to address these issues relating to carbon emissions. Okay.
Thank you very much. A quick one, your response to that?
I'm not sure if it would be the role of the Security Council, but I think the United Nations through the UNFCCC process is trying to address that, and what they since did was that they called for countries to voluntarily pledge how much they would cut their emissions by. Okay. And unfortunately what we've seen is it remains a voluntary process, and big emitters, for example, like the United States, who have historically emitted a lot more than South Africa, are not coming to the table with enough emissions to cut it down. But unfortunately we don't at the moment have a fully legally binding agreement. Otherwise, I don't think some countries such as the United States would have signed it. But with regards to the issue of monitoring, countries have said that they will be able to provide data for monitoring to be able to take place. So I think the UN is trying its best through UNFCCC at this stage.
So can we still count on Oxfam to continue the fight?
We will definitely be watching, we will definitely be putting pressure, and what we're saying is that the current emission targets put on the table are definitely not enough, and a 3°C rise is not acceptable, especially for poor rural folk in Southern Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa. It's not acceptable, and so we will be pushing and making sure that countries stick and actually put further emission targets on the table.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your time. We're taking a quick break. When we return, we'll be taking your call 089-1104-210. COP20, COP21, talk shops or what? This is question time.
How great would it be to have Sia back for this reunion?
He's been traveling Africa for years. He's impossible to get a hold of.
We know what he drinks.
Let's find him.
Yeah!
You think it worked?
Hey, guys!
I'm coming home, coming home. Tell the world that I'm coming home.
It all comes together with a castle.
Welcome back, my guest, Professor Godwell Nhamo, who is Exaro Chair in Business and Climate Change at UNISA, and we're now joined by Melita Steele. She's Senior Climate and Energy Manager at Greenpeace. Those are the guys who normally tie themselves to things and do a lot of things, but she'll tell us about that. Muzi, you're calling us from KZN. Muzi?
Hello, how are you?
I'm well, thanks for the call.
I'm okay, and good evening to the guys at the studio and everyone at home.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I've got a question, man, and also a concern.
Okay.
Also, maybe one must firstly congratulate actually the COP21 success.
Okay.
Although the results or the expectation didn't reach our actually maximum on what we wish for. Mm-hmm. But yeah, if we check like the climate change in South Africa, the way things are or around the world. One would like to ask the panel there on what actually they are exactly, or in actually community mobilization to ensure that not only the government is teaching people about climate change, but also those culprits who are the cause of climate change, or also the polluters, of air, the air polluters. What role are they ensuring that the communities out there are being taught, and also those culprits do pay for the damages which are being caused by them? Now we are facing drought and all that because of the climate change. And now, and if you can check now, South Africa has to face the consequences in ensuring that the country on its own get a bailout. But what actually is
Okay, thank you very much, Muzi. Thank you very much for the call. Welcome to Question Time. Well, it may not have been the best introduction about Greenpeace, but yeah, talk Greenpeace, a lot of Mzabalazo and, coal dumping and things and all that.
So Greenpeace is an environmental campaigning organization. In South Africa, we campaign on climate and energy issues, and specifically we're trying to shift this country away from coal and nuclear and towards renewable energy. You see us in the media quite a lot doing things like dumping coal outside of Eskom, but we also do a lot of work behind the scenes, scientific research, lobbying and advocacy. But can I answer the question?
Yes, exactly.
So in terms of what Greenpeace does in terms of polluters, we've specifically paid quite a lot of attention to Eskom so far. So Eskom is combined with Sasol, they are the two biggest emitters in South Africa. And the reason for that is that 90% of our electricity actually comes from coal. So Greenpeace is very actively trying to shift Eskom away from coal so that they start investing in renewable energy, because we really do believe renewable energy is people's power. And we also do a lot of work in the Highveld, where the current coal-fired power stations are, but also in the Waterberg, where new coal-fired power stations are being planned.
Okay, let's talk about China, Prof, because China is big, in all respects, right? And when it comes to pollution, China is also big. Is it playing its rightful part? I mean, are they putting as much effort in cleaning as much as they are part of the polluters?
Thank you. I think I want to take us back a bit in terms of an African position. I'm an advocate of an African position. One of the callers there spoke about adaptation and all this global warming. And for a record, we are experiencing quite a warm climate this year in South Africa. So really what we are saying there is there are countries that are big polluters, China and the USA. And what has happened in the lead to COP21 is that these two top global polluters have made agreements and they've committed. Now, to the extent that the smooth transition to this one global treaty has been a success, it was because China and the USA have been speaking in terms of their responsibility towards reducing their carbon footprint. So I think President Barack Obama and Xi Jinping, they need to be acknowledged for the role that they have played. Now, it's wrong for us to think that South Africa is not also a top emitter. And actually, South Africa is among the top 15 global emitters. Now, in terms of the African position and African agenda, we might be wrong to believe that we should have this leapfrogging into clean technology or renewable energies. What my position is, as an African, is we need all energy mixes on board. It's not coal or clean energy. It's coal and renewable energy. And I want the viewers back home to mark that.
She doesn't agree.
Coal and renewable energy, because we need all energy mixes on board.
Greenpeace doesn't agree.
I absolutely don't agree. And the reason for that is because this Paris Agreement has very clearly stated that there is no future for fossil fuels. So what we will need to do is phase out fossil fuels by 2050. And what Greenpeace is saying is that renewable energy is already delivering, and by 2050 we should be aiming for 100% renewable energy. Coal belongs in the past, and South Africa cannot continue to emit the level of carbon that it is emitting at the moment.
Why do you believe in this dual system?
Thank you, Mpo. The reason why we are saying that, if you look at the growth trajectory of the country, South Africa, and the growth trajectory of Africa as a whole, without energy, we cannot move. Actually, the major issue in Copenhagen and also in COP21 now has been this idea of developing nations saying we need our development space. So development is a right, and development cannot be a right if there is no energy. Now, what that implies is, yes, we acknowledge that there is now a turning point, there is now a tipping point in terms of the movement into the future, in terms of renewable energy, but we are not there yet.
Okay, hold it there. I want us to take a quick break. When we return, wrap up the show. The number to dial 089-110-4210, 089-110-4210.
How great would it be to have Sia back for this reunion?
He's been traveling Africa for years. He's impossible to get a hold of.
We know what he drinks.
Let's find him.
You think it worked? Hey, guys!
I'm coming home, coming home. Tell the world that I'm coming home.
It all comes together with a castle.
Welcome back. You're still watching Question Time. My guest, Professor Godwell Hamo, ex-Zaro Chair in Business and Climate Change at UNISA. Melita Stiele is Senior Climate and Energy Manager at Greenpeace. Abiso, you are in the Eastern Cape. Hello, Abiso? Okay, we seem to have lost him there. But let us perhaps just wrap up the show here. Are we likely to see a cleaner environment in the next decade or so?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we're turning the corner.
Yes.
Just to go back to the question about our development space and that we need coal.
Yes.
The coal industry is already losing jobs. So Greenpeace is not saying we should be switching off coal today, but it is not a sustainable future. Renewable energy is already proving it can deliver. The CSIR did a study that showed that our current renewable energy investments added 4 billion rand to an economy that's just on the brink of recession. And what is required is that the government creates an enabling framework for things like rooftop solar, which it's not exactly legal at the moment. But if we remove the barriers to renewable energy, anything is possible in this country, really, and it will create jobs and it will stimulate the economy, and coal really does belong in our past.
Yes, I would agree to the level that we have got a soft landing. So what I'm advocating for here is a soft landing. We know that it's certain that the cost of the renewable energy or clean technology is going to go down, and in the distant future it could be possible for us to have renewable energy powering our economies. But we cannot do that with a hard landing. We definitely need a soft landing. And maybe before we close this show, Mpo, we need to drive the agenda as Africans that ours is adaptation through and through. I'm not saying we don't do mitigation, which is reducing greenhouse gas emissions. But like the caller said, we are worried. Our communities are sinking. If there's a drought, if there's a flood, if there's a hailstorm, these are the issues that are actually at our doorsteps. But we're saying we need also to push the mitigation agenda. And for your own sake, the recent report by United Nations Environment Programme in Kenya on the adaptation gap reckons that we need 15 billion annually towards adaptation. And by 2020, from 2025 to about 2050, we need between 50 and 100 billion annually for adaptation. So definitely there's already the adaptation gap financing in Africa. And the world is promising something like 100 billion annually, maybe by 2025. So already we don't have finances for this. But what we can emphasize as an economy and as a country and as a continent is that we need to continue mobilizing domestically, building capacity, asking questions. Are we ready politically? Are we ready financially? Are we ready in terms of documentation? Are we ready in terms of projects on the ground? Okay. These are the issues that we need to continue asking moving forward.
But then, very quickly, Prof. South Africa is a polluter, you say. Then what about your neighboring countries, for instance, Zimbabwe?
Yes, what is happening is like these countries are not going to be static. So this is why the argument for mitigation for other countries is not palatable, because there might be nothing to mitigate at all. So you are saying there, we need to continue pushing on this agenda of on adaptation and also on mitigation on the sidelines. Thank you.
Prof, thank you very much. But we had a quick survey there. If possible, I could just quickly go through it to where we were saying who should be responsible for funding the fight against global warming in developing countries. 42% developed countries, 5% developing countries, whereas 53% believe both these countries should be responsible for funding the fight against global warming. Let me thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That was Question Time for today. A big thank you to my guest and to you for watching the show. Have yourself a wonderful time. Goodbye.